Hey there, we are back for part 2 of my trip report from our trip to California. This time it's Universal Studios Hollywood. We are going to take the studio tour, check out the wonderful stunts of Waterworld, head to Hogwarts with Harry Potter, and visit Super Nintendo World. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me here on episode 201 of the Tomorrow Society Podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. I hope you all enjoyed and have had a chance to listen to episode 200, where I talked for quite a while about our trip to Disneyland, including all 3 park days, where we stayed, what we did, thoughts on Genie Plus, so much more. If you haven't checked that out, you should do so because it leads well into this show. This is about the final day that we spent at Universal Hollywood. I'm also going to talk a bit about where we stayed. We moved to a different hotel, the Garland, which is located close to Universal. We also visited a few beaches on the way, talk a bit about that. But the focus is going to be what we did at Universal, Super Nintendo World, other attractions like Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, Transformers, Despicable Me, Waterworld, especially the studio tour, some of the unique things to that park. I also want to talk about the park itself, how it works. It's kind of an interesting one. It's very different than your typical theme park with its upper lot and lower lot. How things worked with Nintendo, somewhat good, somewhat not so much, but I still think it's a really interesting addition to theme parks in general and to this park. But why am I stepping on myself here? We should just get right to the episode. So first of all, I'm going to play a clip that I recorded actually the day after when I had just gotten back home talking about what we did at Universal. And that's kind of almost like a primer or preview to the larger discussion because I want to delve into a lot of what Universal does well and some things that I think they can do better. And some of these also apply to Disneyland too, and I talked about that. But it's different because this park is just so different. But I want to get right into it because I think this is going to be super fun and hopefully helpful for you if you are planning a Universal Hollywood trip. I'll try to give some tips about what worked for us and what could have worked better. But first, let's dive into my immediate thoughts from a few weeks ago. Let's go to Universal Studios Hollywood. Hey there. Well, I am already back home. I meant to record after our day at Universal Studios Hollywood, and that day was long. And then we were ready packing the next night to go to the airport today. So I'm recording this the night after. I didn't want to wait all the way till I did kind of the more official rest of the recording. Figured I'd record this memo just to kind of let you know quickly about our day. I have very mixed feelings about our day at Universal. In one sense, a lot of great attractions, a lot of fun, interesting parks, some really cool stuff. In another sense, the park's kind of hard to navigate because you've got the big escalators, which are cool. They give you amazing views. Wow. But going with upper and lower lots, and then to navigate on a very busy day where the lines are quite long without Express Pass, which it was a lot of extra money, like would have been like $300 total for us or something. Was a challenge. We did buy the early access $20 a person Nintendo pass. And so we arrived through a shuttle at our hotel, the Garland. Our hotel, the Garland, was awesome. Really cool, old Hollywood place, but with a lot of modern amenities, nice pool area, cool restaurant. We had a pretty basic room, not as big as our Hyatt House room, but worked out perfectly for us. The main reason is they have a trolley that leaves about every hour that takes you to Universal, and it's only about a 5-minute ride. So the trolley leaves at the top of the hour, but actually it left early. We got to Universal at 8 a.m., which for our family, getting up that early and going, that's a lot. You knew that we all weren't going to make it too late. So we get there, though, but by the time you go through, you have to scan, and their app wasn't working, so I had to scan the email, scan the Nintendo ticket, go in, buy the power band, which I guess you could have bought at City Walk, but we hadn't gone there. Then, you scan your real ticket, go in, scan the Nintendo ticket again, then go down all the escalators. By the time we actually got into the land, it was like 8:15, which you don't think is a big deal, but when you're paying for the extra hour, yes, we should have got there early, blah, blah, blah. But we got in there, and there were the games and stuff, but the first thought was Mario Kart's already 35 minutes. Let's just do that, and then when we're done, we'll do the other stuff. Now, that was probably a rookie move, because we could have done the games with almost no wait, and in hindsight, we should have done that. Because when we came out, the games were mobbed, and the main reason is because Mario Kart broke when we were a couple minutes. It was already longer, and we were probably 30, 35 minutes in. Mario Kart breaks. We were probably in that line for an hour and a half. We did get to ride it. I'll say up front, I think some of the dark ride scenes are amazing. I think the inventiveness involved in putting this together is super cool. The gameplay I didn't really understand, even after I paid very close attention in the pre-show, and the cast member even now talks over and explains it. But it didn't really matter because it's a fun ride. So yes, there are things they could have done differently, and the thing is, there aren't that many times where I was thinking it'd be more like, kind of like in Forbidden Journey, where you're doing the Quidditch part, or when you're flying around, which to me is the least interesting. I thought it'd be more of that, because that's how it starts, and that's also how the Rainbow Road scene goes, which I enjoy. There's a lot of physical sets. There's a lot of cool stuff. So I'll talk about this more the more I think about it, but on the whole, I'd say it was a good ride, but, not a Rise of the Resistance or Forbidden Journey when it came level, but solid. Very pretty. The queue's gorgeous. Of course, the queue we spent so much time in because it kept breaking. But I appreciate, compared to when we were at Disneyland and stuff broke, this time they did give us a lot of info about what was happening. And I really appreciated that they told us more, so we weren't so left out in the dark like we were with Indiana Jones. But here it just, it was different. So they gave us a little info. It didn't work as well. But I will say that things I really enjoyed at the park overall. After that, the studio tour is great. I really like the studio tour. I think it's one of the coolest things, attractions anywhere. It's like an hour long. You learn a lot about films. Then you also have little attractions. I appreciate just going by old sets that have been used in movies and seeing the videos of the movies and everything. And that was really fun. And then you add in things like Jaws, which of course is not in Florida, and Earthquake, which is no longer in Florida. Those are really cool additions. The Flash Flood is neat. Now, you do have Kong 360 and Fast and the Furious at the end, which again, going with my wife who gets motion sickness, she wanted to do the tour, but had to basically shut her eyes and be like, I'm done. So that's the unfortunate part, where when you have two things, whereas the old Kong I don't think would have bothered her, doing these total motion simulators, and I know why they had to swap out Kong after the fire, but that did make a difference somewhat too. That was the highlight of the day for me. Really, when we were in Super Nintendo World, after the blinds were just mobbed, it was so many people and it was so overwhelming that all we really did was Mario Kart, and then they hit some power-ups. And so I don't know if the band's really worth it because we didn't do all the games, because they just didn't want to wait like 30 minutes or more, possibly more for each game. You're basically knocking out your whole morning or day, and we could have stayed, but it was just a little overwhelming. So, we did the studio tour. We did Forbidden Journey, which I enjoyed a lot as always, though that was a case where the cast member said there's no wait for single rider. Said, great, let's just do that, because there's an 80-minute wait. So we follow where she says to go, and somehow went the wrong way and ended up in the main line. And it took us a little while to realize, this is single rider, this is kind of long. And so we waited about an hour. And granted, we got to ride together, which was nice, but that was kind of frustrating because there was a queue, and we did not go back in that queue. We went over, so I don't really know what happened or how we ended up in this other line. It was really confusing how it happened. But I still like Forbidden Journey. We also later on did Flight of the Hippogriff, which is like the shortest roller coaster I think I've ever ridden. Most of the coaster is just the lift hill, and then when you're going into the station. But I will say I really like the queue, like Hagrid's Hut. I have not done it in Florida before, just we didn't really bother. And that was about a 20-minute wait, so that made it better. We also watched the Waterworld show, which my family didn't really love, but I thought was super cool. As someone who saw that movie, and I wouldn't even say I'm a fan of the movie, but just in general, really love stunt shows.
cool stunts, everything else. I thought that was top notch. Love the fact that at the end they tell you what movies they're from and everything, and the stunt performers are out taking pictures with people. And just the stunt level of stunt work in that is really impressive. And just the way they interact with the crowd, I thought it was awesome. That was probably one of the other highlights of the day for me, was getting a chance to do that. We ended up eating a lot of food in the Simpsons area because it's right in the middle of the upper lot. So we did a lot of that where, not great values, and we always ended up eating in the donut area because Universal Hollywood has a really big problem with not having enough seating. We also had this problem at Disneyland, but it was much worse in Universal because you have all these different stands and very limited seating, and it was just a real challenge to find anywhere to sit. And I'll talk about that more when we get there. Other things we did Transformers, which my daughter had never done. Intense, all that. Waited about 30 minutes. It wasn't so bad. So we did go down. I stayed with one of my daughters longer, and we went down to the lower lot again. Got a little bit of food. We were going to do Mummy, and all of a sudden that line shot up to like 80 minutes. So we just did Transformers, hung out, and also there were some character things going on there with the Raptor and then with some of the Transformers, which was cool. A lot of characters in Universal in general. So that was cool. Also at night, we also did Despicable Me Mini Mayhem, which I've never done actually in Florida because it always had kind of a long line. Again, simulator. But I thought it was fun. I mean, it's not as intense as Transformers, which I appreciate. But it was a good time overall. And just in general with the day, I think we did a few other things. I'm forgetting them now, but I'll talk about them more in the ultimate recap. But just in general, I feel like the park is kind of needs more. The Nintendo is so popular that even with the early access, it got us to ride Mario Kart. So it was essentially like paying for Rise of the Resistance, where it was like, you got to do it, and that's about it. We could have waited longer, but then we really went up against it, and the lines were just getting so long, and it just kind of was out of control. So I'd say it was kind of hit or miss day. I'm glad I got to go. Love that I did the studio tour. I hadn't been to Universal since 1985, but I'll talk about it a lot more when I have a chance to sleep and kind of clear my head. But found it. I'm glad we went. Really enjoyed seeing Nintendo World. That land is super cool, but then I think there's some logistical things they need to figure out, especially with only having one ride. But still think the park has a lot of promise, and with some changes they're planning to make, I'm very curious to see where it ends up. But I'll be back in the future to talk about everything more when I get back to normal sleeping and everything. So I'll send it off now to Dan in the future.
Welcome back. Well, listening to that a few weeks later is so interesting to me because, one, I sound so tired. Like, we had flown back, and granted, everything went smoothly with that. But just, wow, I sound tired. But in general, I mean, I was able to cover a lot of my key thoughts with that. But now I hope to dig in a little further. But let me talk a little bit about some elements around the park that I briefly mentioned on this. So we had stayed at Disneyland. We stayed at the Hyatt House. We went to the park for 3 days. And then on that fourth day, we did not rent a car. We had taken a transportation from John Wayne Airport to the Hyatt House, which worked out great. That morning, I had already reserved a rental car, which thankfully there is a national, it's also Alamo, I think maybe even Enterprise, rent-a-car that is about a 3-minute walk from the Hyatt House. You basically just walk a little bit up Catella, and it's right there. So I had reserved that. That worked out great. They got me I reserved a car, but they had an upgrade to a small SUV, a Nissan Rogue, that was super nice. I appreciated it. It was pretty valuable. It was like $60 a day, which to me doesn't seem that insane given how convenient it was, and we were doing it in such a highly trafficked area. I always just assume if it's going to be by Disneyland, they're going to charge you much more, but that wasn't really the case. Ultimately, that car would we would take that car to get to the Garland later that day, our hotel, which is very close to Universal. It's like a 5-minute trolley ride. And then we would take the car after Universal back to the Long Beach Airport and park it there. So I will say the Long Beach Airport is probably one of the smallest airports I've ever been, besides I think the one I went to once in Bar Harbor, Maine, where I took a 20-seat plane with like rows of 1 seat on each side and windshield wipers. This was not that small, but it is a case where you get to walk out basically onto the runway a little bit and then go up the little elevated staircase to get to the plane, which my kids really enjoyed. Very small. The rental car return is just one big parking lot where all the rental car companies, you park the car, you find the right person, they say, give us the keys, and then you go. Kind of crazy. But I'm getting ahead of myself here because first, when we were driving over to the Garland, we did stop at a few beaches. We had planned initially to do more in California. Thought about going to Griffith Park, obviously connections to Walt Disney, plus there's the observatory. Thought about going to the Getty, which I know is a very cool art museum that has a monorail. Gotta love monorails, gets you there and everything else. But everybody was really tired. So instead, we just stopped at a few beaches. I looked up kind of quietest beaches. And granted, this was cloudy and 65 on a Wednesday in early June. And I don't think anywhere would have been super packed because this was really not swimming weather. Maybe if we had wetsuits or something in the Pacific Ocean. So we went over to a park, Alamitos Park in Long Beach. And we picked up In-N-Out Burger and took that over there, trying to do, a chain that we don't have in St. Louis, Missouri. Picked that up, went over, ate at that park. The park is basically a few picnic benches, a little green area, but you're right next to the beach, kind of in a quiet cove in the Long Beach area. So we stayed there for a little bit, walked up and down some rocks, saw that, if you're looking for something very quiet, there's a bunch of beaches right there on the peninsula there in Long Beach. So then we wanted to do a little more. So we drove over to Seal Beach, which is close to Long Beach and has one of the longest boardwalks in that area. So we parked at Seal Beach, again, very easy, kind of quiet, small little town, and went over and walked on the boardwalk, kind of got a nice view of the Pacific Ocean. Both places we didn't stay very long, but those were just very easy ways. And because we're coming up from Anaheim, so if you think about it, if you don't know the geography that well, Anaheim is to the south of LA. And then we're kind of making our way through Los Angeles, not during rush hour on purpose, and getting to Universal Hollywood. So we did a few things on the way, not as much, but ultimately after eating, going to the beach and everything else, we ended up getting to the hotel just a little bit before check-in and they got us our room. And I will say that I highly recommend if you are going to do Disney and Universal, whatever order you do. I know even if you're someone who typically likes to stay at one hotel, I highly recommend that you split it because you're not going to want to get up super early and drive through rush hour traffic in Los Angeles either direction to get there. And I assume a lot of people might say, okay, we're going to stay by Disneyland and do a day at Universal. Even so, I am not sure. Given how easy it is to go to different airports and everything else, you'd have to get up pretty early. And there was still a lot of traffic in that downtown LA area, even in the middle of the day on a weekday. Significant amount of traffic. It took us well over an hour total to get from Anaheim all the way to our hotel. So I think it was worth it. Also, another benefit is that the Garland is really cool. It's like an old boutique hotel that it was celebrating its 50th anniversary. And a lot of it kind of feels like I almost picture like I was on vacation, like when they went on vacation in Goodfellas or something. Not that there were a bunch of gangsters there, but it had that feeling about the past and showing that. And even the pool area kind of has that. And they have modern amenities and, USBs, a nice TV, all that. So it's not like old in a bad way, but it definitely has that old vibe. The outsides of the buildings, even the interior hallways feel that way, but it has charm. It's cool. Some of the other options for staying close to Universal, there's a Sheraton and a Hilton. The main reason I didn't stay is both of those were a lot more expensive, several $100s more. It wasn't on the level of the Grand Californian, but it was expensive. And even those, I know they say they're within walking distance. From what I have read, it is not an easy walk. There's really no way to walk from the Garland because you have to go up this giant hill because Universal is more on top of a hill. You're starting on the upper lot. So really, you don't want to have to make that walk up the hill. But thankfully, we didn't end up having to do the drive and go to the parking lots or anything because the trolley, like I mentioned in the clip of the Garland, is so convenient. And what they do is they have this trolley that goes every hour. At the top of the hour, it leaves. There's a small stretch in the middle of the afternoon where it does not go every hour. But in the morning and then in the later afternoon, it does. And then on the 15, it will take you back. We found it to be very reliable. The one thing I'd recommend if for some reason you stay there is get there a bit early. Because like when we were leaving at 8, we got there at about 7:45 and we barely got on that trolley. They were getting ready to leave. And I know he would come back and get more people. So it's not like you wouldn't make it there. But if you're trying to get there at a certain time, the one downside is if you're trying to get there, let's say the park opens at 9, the trolley leaves at 9. So you probably have to leave at 8 in order to get there early if you want to be like a rope drop person. Like technically we really We never would have made it, but in theory, should have left at 7 and then maybe gotten some food if there was something in City Walk or whatever, gotten into the park as early as possible. By this point of the trip, I'm impressed we got on the one at 8. That everyone did amazing to get that way. One more thing about the Garland, I will just say if you're looking for a place to stay near Universal that is a little more reasonably priced, but still very nice and has, it's got a nice restaurant, sit-down restaurant that people from the area come and eat at least that was the case when we were there. They also have a nice kind of more casual restaurant or area near the pool. There's also a pool bar. My daughter really wanted to swim, so both nights we were there. And so this first night I got in the water with her and it was freezing cold. Everybody's just in the hot tub basically. And the second night I just got a beer from the bar right there, sat next to the pool. She swam. It was one of the really highlights of the trip, just being able to relax in this cool area and just chill. They also show movies in the summer. They were showing Back to the Future the first night, which I was like, cool, I like it. Second night, we stayed there longer. They were showing Happy Feet. Not so exciting for me. I got to see most of it, though I wasn't paying that much attention. I was just kind of winding down after our trip. But let's really dig in now, though, to Universal Hollywood. We took the trolley, we got there pretty reasonably, and now let's talk about our day itself. So the first thing, of course, when you're going to Universal Studios Hollywood is you want to think about the ticket. And we were buying just one-day tickets. So Universal, even more than Disney, offers a lot of deals for multi-day visits because it's a park that doesn't have that many attractions, so a lot of people may consider going for one day. If you are looking to perhaps have a more relaxed experience or just not have to rush around or just want to see what's around there, hang out at City Walk, whatever, a multi-day ticket may be the way to go. For us, it was just we already had 3 days at Disneyland. We're kind of adding this on not near the end, but fairly close to the end, so we just did one day. And we bought from Undercover Tourist, which typically offers at least small discounts. They're a very reliable resource, and I'm saying this not as someone who gets anything from them, just based on my experience. There was a slight discount, but be careful there. Not from them, but just in general, because like with Disney, these are based on which date you're going. So where it said it was a certain price, the actual price for those dates when I actually went to buy them was about $20 more from what it says up from this number. So it was more. It was a significant amount. So then you have that amount. Now, you can buy Express Pass tickets including the Express Pass, which basically it's more than just like Genie Plus or Fast Pass or anything else because you're getting to go in this line that very few people use. This is not like Lightning Lane where I never once saw big backups or anything. People that were using the Express Pass system were getting on basically right away. And that was our experience because we did not purchase the Express Pass ticket. And I will say that it's one of those weird situations where on the surface you look at it and you say, my goodness, because I don't even know what our ticket would have been. It might have been nearly $200 a person with Express Pass or something like that. Because I didn't check it out, but Undercover Tourist was saying Express Pass tickets from $170, which you add in more, it would have been even more per person. So that's a lot more. It's different even than paying $25 extra for Genie Plus. However, when I think about it, given the value, I don't know if you'd say it's worth it, but if you're going for one day, if you really want to have the most relaxing day and make sure you see everything, I don't know, maybe cut the money somewhere else. Maybe consider it. I'm not sure. Something to think about at least. I hate to just say go for all the upcharges, but it's a pretty hefty charge and there aren't that many attractions. Because really, if I think about it, if we had used Express Pass, we would have had obviously a more relaxing day. We never would have waited for such a long line for Harry Potter. It does not help you at the Mario Kart ride. So if I look at the attractions that have Express Pass and how long we waited, I think about it, we really would have mostly just saved time. We would have done Revenge of the Mummy, which we didn't end up doing, and we would have done Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash. So those are two attractions we didn't get to do that we would have done. We obviously would have waited a lot less for Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. But some of the other attractions, we didn't really wait for Despicable Me or Kung Fu Panda or Flight of the Hippogriff. And Studio Tour, we already had an Express Pass, more than that in a minute. We would have waited a little less for Transformers. And I guess we could have got priority seating for Waterworld, but I thought our seating was fine. Does not include Mario Kart, so that is one thing. And you can only do attractions one at a time, so it's not like you can do it over and over. So in our case, that's the difference. We would have had 2 more attractions we would have ridden, and we would have saved time not having to wait, mostly saved time on Harry Potter and saved a bit of time on Transformers and on Flight of the Hippogriff. So not worth it for us. However, there's another ticket option that they offer, which does relate to Super Nintendo World, and that's called an early access pass. This is something you buy completely separate from your ticket. And it feels a little bit like Genie Plus in a way, but you're paying $20 extra per person, $80 total for 4 of us, and you're getting into the park an hour early. It's kind of similar to how they do it for the on-site guests, where they would let you in 30 minutes early, but not at any additional fee. But here you're getting an hour, and they do cap it and sell them out. However, there still were a lot of people there, so I don't want to oversell it and think there was no one there. So I decided to do that because I thought about it, and my biggest concern going in when you have things like virtual access to the land and everything else is that we would not be able to ride Mario Kart without a 3 or 4 hour wait. At least 2 hours. That's the lowest I saw when we were there. Now, granted, we did not stay until the very end of the day, but it was essentially 2 hours plus the entire time we were there, sometimes as high as 180, a few times I saw 120, 140. So you're talking at least 2 hours. Now, granted, it broke and we waited a while, but still, it would have been significant. So I decided, similar to what we did with Radiator Springs Racers and Rise of the Resistance, I'm going to pay this extra $20. It feels like an upcharge. I feel like I got gouged a little bit, but it made sense to me. The big question is, was this worth it? Well, like I mentioned in the clip, it did take a while to get from the entrance all the way to the lower level, so I suspect they let you in early, probably 30 minutes or so. I'm not sure the exact number. So if we had gotten there earlier, if we had no consideration of trying to sleep in at all, we would have thought, okay, we're going to get on this trolley at 7. We're going to get there around 7:10, and then we're going to have plenty of time, whether we line up or, whatever else. We're going to be in the land at 8 o'clock. And I think that is really important to make this valuable. Even getting in the land 10 or 15 minutes later, that puts you behind all the people that got in right at 8, like any other time, like when you're rope dropping at Walt Disney World, same idea. Now, I will say that in hindsight, if I had known the ride was going to break, that I would have done things entirely differently. We would have done the games while we were in the land during our early access hour. We would have done the games immediately and then got in line. And so then, even if the wait had been an hour or something, as long as we get in that line in front of the people arriving at 9 o'clock, it's still going to be a lot less time than before. Now, this is obviously results-based thinking. When we got in line for Mario Kart, if it had been the amount of time, and a lot of times, especially you see this with Disney, and we even saw this at Universal, the amount of time listed for the wait is inflated. So it says 35 minutes. Let's say it only took 20, and then the ride was 5 minutes. If it had broken, we still would have had time. Even if it had been 30 minutes or 35, we still would have had time before those people came in to do some of the games. The problem being, because Mario Kart broke down multiple times and we were in that line for so long, by the time we got out, our early access was well expired. Looking at it from the positive side, you could say that early access pass allowed us to ride Mario Kart without waiting as long as we would have, and not to have to worry about trying to get on the app and get virtual access and do all those things, which I think there was something on my app, because when I pulled up the app, I never even saw options for virtual times, which I have seen when I've done it at home. So I think something was going on there possibly, or maybe I hadn't clicked on the right thing because I really wasn't looking that closely. If you are looking to avoid having to worry about getting in at a certain hour and then battling the crowds, because I will say, if the 9 to 10 people, now granted, a lot of those people were probably people that also had paid for the 8 to 9 access and had stayed. So the time for people from 9 to 10 might be worse than it would be at 2 p.m. or whatever. But at least based on my experience, I will say that if you want to do Mario Kart and do all the games without paying for early access, you need to budget a significant portion of your day. I don't know how much, but I'd say 3-4 hours or so. Now, if you have the early access and do it right, it could be a lot less. You may only take that hour and a bit more, assuming rides don't break down. One other thing I will say, though, taking a broader look at this land itself and how it was designed, I think there are some flaws with it. One, only having one attraction versus also having the Yoshi ride. And now who knows, maybe there was just no ability with the space they had to work with to do this. but there had probably was some way they could have done it where they added the Yoshi ride or some other type of ride. Only having one attraction really puts the weight on that attraction. So that ride is going to be mobbed with people, similar to when, you had Smuggler's Run opening or even Web Slingers, though people quickly kind of soured on Web Slingers a bit, and it was a bit different just because Nintendo, as we saw by the box office receipts of Super Mario Brothers, so popular. And having that area at the bottom of the lower lot also kind of puts it in this kind of packed in weird spot that you just don't feel anywhere else. But it reminds me a bit of when they opened the first Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal, and the shops were so small. And it was, I know that related to J.K. Rowling and what she expected. And everyone was like, why would they ever do that? And granted, they might have just had no choice, but there were some challenges there where really, they had Dragon Challenge, which helped a lot with people, and then Flight of the Hippogriff, and then the big draw of Butterbeer and Ollivander. So there's a lot of different things. But Nintendo, really, they needed a second attraction here. And you could say, oh, well, the games are an attraction. Yes, they are. But some of them are very simple. Some of them are more complicated. Some of them are very simple. And to wait 30, 40, whatever, it might have been an hour, I'm not sure, wait that long, given how much they're personal games. So each person is not spending 5 seconds on this. It's kind of like you almost have to treat each one like a character greeting, where there's interactions involved that are going to slow it down. They needed something else in this land because when it was the normal people and not the early access, everything was mobbed. Second thing I will say is they're doing some weird stuff. Like, for example, they had Mario there to meet. And if you're me and I'm thinking of this land, I'm thinking there should be characters out there at all times. There should not be a time like this where we walk up and there's maybe 15 people waiting for Mario. And probably that was low because of what they told us. And they said, this was at about 9:35. They said, Mario's about to go in. We've cut off the line. He's coming back at 11. I know there might have other characters and everything, but if you should have the ability in this land to meet Mario, it should be like meeting Mickey at Mickey's house. And I know they've got Mario out in kind of the middle area there. So maybe you can't just completely keep swapping them out. But why not just say, Mario's going to take a break. That Mario walks in. The other one comes out 5 minutes later. Not to break, if there are any kids out there, let me just say. But in theory, of course, there's only one Mario. But after Mario takes his break, you come back out. But that fact right there really left a sour taste in my mouth for how Universal is treating guests at Super Nintendo World. I know they have a challenge with such a small land and with the demand far exceeding the supply of what they had to offer. But they need to right now be thinking. And I know this is not going to be the case in Florida, because in Florida, you're going to have Mario Kart, after many have already ridden it in California and in Japan, some. And then you also have Yoshi and what I think is going to be the big draw of that, which is the Donkey Kong coaster. So Mario Kart won't have the same emphasis or pressure that it does. Kind of like how Forbidden Journey in Florida now doesn't face as much of the problem because they have Hagrid's, which is so popular. But the way it's designed now, it's just, there's too many guests that are going to go into that and may be wowed, and you might not even think about it, but when they really think about it, are going to be frustrated. They're not going to want to wait that long for the Mario Kart ride. If they do wait, they may enjoy it, but they may go, was that worth multiple hours to wait? I don't know. So that's something they really need to think about too. And then the individual games, in theory, with the power bands are fun. Talking about the power bands, you can easily convert that to looking at Magic Band Plus, but Magic Band Plus is also function as your lightning lane entry and your ticket entry, so there's another purpose there, even if some of the other elements are silly. Then you look at it in terms of the wands. The wands, especially in Diagon Alley, have a lot of fun things they do, but are not designed in the same way again, where here there's things you can do that have almost no weight, which is just hit some coins, have it make a sound. That's fun. That's fun. It gives you points on Mario Kart, which is fun. But those games in the land that use these, if they're mobbed, you just spent $40, actually 41 something after tax. It was $83 for two bands that are not very attractive, not something you're really going to wear, that are kind of like flimsy souvenirs that, yes, connect to an app and, yes, allow you to make the fun noise of the coin setting. Maybe that's enough if you're that big of a Nintendo fan. Maybe it's enough that those power bands, but to me, it felt like a price gouge. And yes, also magic bands felt that way a bit. You could say that the wands are that way. Lightsabers are definitely that way. So I don't want to let Disney off the hook. But just speaking specifically about these bands, it felt too expensive given what's involved. And I know that there are a lot of cool things to them, but one, they should be about $20. Two, they need to give you other things to do with them. And I know that space is so small, almost overwhelmingly small. When we came out of the Mario Kart ride, we were just overwhelmed by people. And if you have kids or you yourself don't love the crowds that are a little overwhelmed by crowds and sounds and everything, just kind of on the sensitive side, you're not going to last long in there. The early access is the only way to really do that. But again, I'm not even sure I want to sell it that much because in some ways I look at it and I go, doesn't seem like the best use of time because you could totally run it. You're essentially paying to either do the games or ride Mario Kart. And if you could do all of it and ride Mario Kart, then congratulations. Good job. Last thing, I do want to talk a little more about Mario Kart, which I think is a very good ride. I think the online videos don't give it justice. If you set aside the wait times and any mechanical issues, the queue is cool. There's a lot of neat scenes and rooms. The one that I found a little jarring was the bomb making room because we were stuck there for a long time. I think that was the first time it broke. Then we got down to the bottom of the stairs and near the end and it broke again. But that is a super long queue. It reminds me a little bit of Flight of Passage where it's just like, wow, they really designed this queue to be super long and for people to wait in it for multiple hours. We got through it for a little while. It moved for a while, then it stopped, I think partially due to issues with the ride. But a lot of really neat details, especially if you're a Nintendo fan, really feels like you're walking through a video game. I think they did a great job with the queue in general. And then the ride itself, I feel like has a lot of neat scenes. Kind of a pretty ride, like really nice. It reminds me of kind of almost like an old school attractive, experiential, neat dark ride. Setting aside the gaming components, I think the best part about it was just some of the areas, like there's areas with clouds and fountains and even Bowser's Castle and everything else. And similar to Forbidden Journey, I found the screen-based portions where it's like you're on the path, besides the Rainbow Road sequence, which worked amazingly well, to be kind of boring. And I will say the games, it's fun to just shoot those shells. You do something to note. You will run out quickly. Keep an eye on how many shells you have. They will give you more, but this is not Buzz Lightyear. You do not get a never-ending supply of shells. So make sure you keep an eye on that. I can't really give a lot of tips about the gameplay. I did fine. I didn't do terribly. I didn't do great. I think it's one of those kind of like Web Slingers, but even more that if you ride a bunch of times, you're going to figure it out. I think that the AR is kind of a nice, not gimmick, but nice extra thing where you, it's kind of weird where you're looking at that, then you're also looking at the sets and you're kind of looking at the screen and then you're shooting. And it's one of those things where I think as they develop the technology, this is going to seem very rudimentary. But at the time, I appreciate that they're trying something different and didn't just do a sit in front of a screen go. If you were going to do the full ride, it would be so much track. There's no way they could ever fit it, I suspect. And I suspect this is a pretty big show building anyway. I'd like to study it actually now that I've ridden it. I had not watched any YouTube videos. I'd like to watch more to kind of get more reminder about it. But I will say in general, I think this is a solid ride. Does a good job with a really fun, popular game. I just wish it was supplemented in the land by multiple attractions. When you have a ride like this, that people are waiting 2, 3, 4 hours, and I know there's the newness factor, which is going to make people enjoy it more, but it doesn't seem to load that fast. They have a lot of issues, and also with the having to put on the visor and get all settled in and get ready with the game and all of that and pull that down, it's not a quick loading process. This is not an OmniMover. This is pretty slow loading, which also I think, I don't know the numbers, but I would say it's impacting the wait time significantly. So to summarize, I feel like I'm glad I got to visit Super Nintendo World overall. I just think go in with your eyes open where you may go and get a virtual time and it isn't that mobbed and have a great experience. I will find my experience, especially having paid extra, was mixed where I'm glad we got to ride Mario Kart because when it broke, I thought, should we just leave the line? But if we had left the line, we would have basically had a complete failure of an experience because we hadn't done any of the games. And also I found the app to be very glitchy. My daughter was getting frustrated because she couldn't get her band to connect to the app on her phone. She ultimately had to scan it to mine. And I think part of that is just signal may not have been strong even for Wi-Fi well into that building. and that made it an issue. So something to be aware of. Again, like I mentioned with Galaxy's Edge, if you have less strong cell service or, try the Wi-Fi, you may have some concerns. So, have that app ready on multiple phones so at least you can keep track. Though obviously, if you have like kids of a certain age and have their own phone, they're going to want to put it on their own app. So that was another challenge there. But overall, I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of really cool details if you're a Nintendo fan. But even my daughter, Etta, who's a big Nintendo fan and is 10 years old, came out of it enjoying it, but was not blown away. She doesn't really talk about it that much. And that interests me because, I'm not saying she hated it. I think she liked it and thought it was cool. But it didn't stand out as much to her as I thought it might. And that's something interesting. I think possibly just due to being kind of overwhelmed with people and everything, it wasn't that kind of magical experience you might see people having where they're just, I'm hitting all the things, I'm running around. It was mobbed with people, and that can definitely impact your experience. Looking at Universal on the whole, we're definitely going to talk about all the other rides we did, but Universal in one sense is much easier to get through because there aren't that many attractions. A lot fewer. It reminds me a lot of Disney's Hollywood Studios, where there are fewer attractions and a few headliners that really draw, and then some others. But for example, this is just anecdotally, I'm looking at, on a Monday at 3 p.m., I am looking at wait times right now for this on their app. And here's what we've got. We've got Mario Kart 140, Jurassic World 120, Harry Potter 100, Simpsons 90, Mummy 80, Transformers 75, Studio Tour 60, Despicable Me 50, Fly the Hooker 45. And then you have Super Silly Funland, which is like a Dumbo spinner, 35, and then 25 for Kung Fu Panda, 15 for Ollivanders. Now, I know that's a lot of numbers, but the point is, all the big attractions are 50 minutes or more, and that's if you consider Despicable Me a big attraction. And so this is the same thing we experienced, though not even at this scale. Also, Secret Life of Pets, only doing a virtual queue, and it looks like they're out of virtual line times. Doesn't seem to be a standby line. And looking at it, this is the challenge on a busy day at this park where I think makes me wonder if Express Pass is worth it, even though it's super expensive, or multiple days going early in the morning and then taking a break, or doing an evening and a morning and then a break and then an evening, something different, because during the middle of the day, oh my gosh, they get so many people, and they don't have that many rides. So it becomes a challenge to decide what to do. And we ran into this. So, my highest priorities for this park were doing Mario Kart, the Studio Tour, Jurassic World, Secret Life of Pets. Well, Jurassic World was closed the entire time we were there, the full day. Now, granted, it was a chillier day. It was in the 60s, but I would have braved it because I wanted to see those big animatronics. So that was a disappointment. I know those types of things happen. I'm not just saying, this park is terrible because of it, but that was a disappointment. The other disappointment was Secret Life of Pets because it's on the upper lot. So we were down in the lower lot till probably 10 a.m. after we got a little bit to eat after Nintendo before we went back up. By the time we got up there, it was nearly an hour, and it never dropped below 50 minutes. And you could say, well, you probably should have waited, but people just weren't interested in our family in waiting that long for that. And I was explaining how cool it was. But the problem was it never got too high where they never offered the virtual queue. And I wondered about this because it would be 50, 55 minutes, stay around there. And I read somewhere online that it's usually more than an hour. But I thought at some point they're going to offer the virtual times, right? Because I always assumed as a backup, well, we'll just do virtual. Who cares? We'll just do it hours later. The idea that you could join hours later. Well, I never noticed it being offered in the app ever. And I also didn't see it saying like no virtual times left. So I don't think it was an option. I even went and talked to a cast member. They had these guest services people right in the middle. And I showed her the app and I said, are they going to offer the virtual queue? And she had no idea. She didn't really know. And granted, this is one cast member. Had no idea what I was talking about. Could not help me at all. So never made it on Secret Life of Pets, which was disappointing because I know these are two of the things I want to do the most. Thankfully, we were able to do the studio tour, which I thought was awesome, like I mentioned on the clip. I just really appreciate the attention paid to older films, to classic Hollywood, to different genres. And while this studio tour, you got Jimmy Fallon, he's kind of doing goofy stuff, everything else. But the overall emphasis, you have your driver who gives you some background, and then with them having the screen right there and them showing you different films, and you're seeing the sets and they're showing the films. Some films I knew, some films I don't know that well. Driving through Western scenes, driving through, different types of movies, seeing, props from War of the Worlds, like the blown up plane or all the vehicles they had, all the various different areas you drive by, even though the fire had destroyed it, but you do drive by a recreated version of the clock tower from Back to the Future, which looked weird, and he even referenced it looked weird, but the driver did not. He's not the driver, actually. The host of the speaker did not mention that there was the fire, which I thought would be something interesting to tell us, but they never did. But things I really enjoyed on this studio tour, beyond just the connection to old Hollywood, it made me want to go back and watch some old movies that I haven't seen in a while, or just dig up some others from Universal and other studios past. But I really also enjoy the fun little attractions inside it. And this is especially because I did visit Universal Orlando. I visited Universal Hollywood, like I said, when I was 1985, but also visited Universal Orlando a year or two after, around when it opened. And we did Earthquake, and, there was Jaws, there was Confrontation, all those things. So to have a Jaws section, which not as significant as the full one, but you get to be attacked by the shark, and then everything else happens. You have the Earthquake, which is still very well done. Reminded me a lot of Catastrophe Canyon, which I know was flipped because Catastrophe Canyon kind of reminds itself of Earthquake and everything else. But the Earthquake scene was very fun, and then they showed us the clip from Bones where they used that, which I thought was very cool to see. And, the flash flood is fun, and we didn't even get that wet, but getting the chance to see that. Also, I find that the Kong 360, not as cool as if there was actually a Kong animatronic, like Confrontation, like Kong was before the fire. I get why they decided to do something different, not wanting to build an entirely new animatronic, which I know is not cheap, and likely, like you think of the Yeti, has a lot of mechanical issues. But I thought that was very cool. Didn't think the 360 was my favorite, but it was better than the Fast and the Furious finale, which again, as part of a studio tour, it's just kind of like, oh, that was weird at the end. But if the supercharged version is anything like that, I have not ridden Fast and Furious Supercharged. Oh boy. It's not very exciting. I think some of the pre-show areas where it makes it seem like they're standing there are kind of cleverly done. It's kind of like that, sort of like the hologram thing you see with Dumbledore and with Ron and Hermione and Harry on Forbidden Journey in that queue, but a little more impressive and more recent. But the actual part where you're kind of going through, fun, I guess. I still kind of find the technology of being on a tram and putting in these various different ride setups and then being spun around and everything is cool, especially considering what used to be there. But overall, it's kind of like not that great. I really like more of the physical things. I even like the silly thing with Norman Bates chasing you with a knife as you see him carry a body and put it in the trunk. The fact that they do that over and over is really fun. You go through the sets from the recent movie Nope, which I have not seen, by Jordan Peele. Those are impressively done, and there's a little reference. I don't know if something more happened. We heard the voice from it, but we were in the front. Something happened behind us, but I didn't really get a clear look at that. But overall, just I didn't want it to end. It's like an hour long, and I was like, make this 2 hours. And I know there's like a walkthrough tour you can do. I saw some people walking through some of the houses. You do get to see some of the various houses and facades and things, which I always really appreciate. Given how many changes we've seen at Disney Hollywood Studios from Disney MGM Studios, and even how many changes Universal has made, and they're doing more things. They're closed the special effects show. They closed Animal Actors. They're going to do some sort of big rumored Fast and the Furious coaster. So they're also moving away from kind of the focus more on movie making and all of that with what they're doing. So it really warms my heart that they still have this tour, and I hope it continues and they find new ways to kind of do physical sets versus virtual, because the two weakest parts of it for me were probably the two attractions that get listed on the website separately, but are actually kind of the parts where I was going, we don't really need this. Why don't we just focus on the movies and have more physical sets things? But I understand in the modern theme park world, that's kind of where they're going. Another attraction that I really enjoyed was the Water World show. Oh my gosh, it's such an awesome stunt show. And you'd be like, Dan, you mean the Waterworld film with Kevin Costner where, Dennis Hopper shoots scenery and they all went, we got to find dry land. Yes. It is great. And again, thinking back to the focus on movie making and on how things work, this stunt show is so much fun. Even if you're not that interested in like movie making, just the fun of the stunts and people falling in the water and just kind of the silliness of the plot. And you've got explosions and you've got a plane flies into this lagoon and just So much happens. The people that work on this show, the stunt people, actors, they are so good at what they do. I mean, you take for granted when one of them falls a long way into the water successfully, acting like they're dead. You have a separate person that gets caught on fire, like the deacon, and who's the main villain. And then, it's just really well done and fun and has that sense of excitement and, it's violent, but not in a particularly rough or cruel way, more in kind of, you all know that they're kind of winking at the audience that this is fun. And it feels like a throwback. And the reason being that the original Waterworld show opened here in 1995. And it says enough, too, that when they opened their Universal Beijing, Singapore, Japan, they all have the Waterworld show. They just don't have it in Florida. I understand it does take up a lot of real estate, but it is such fun. Everything I heard about it almost undersold the attraction for me. And I love even at the end when they come out and they kind of all take their bows and they announce various movies or TV shows that the performers have been in, and that these are professionals and you can go take pictures with them and everything else. And I thought it was just a blast. Now, not everyone in our family loved it as much, but I will say that if you're interested in movie making, if you like stunts, if you kind of wish there were more old school Universal, and we still see it at Hollywood Studios with the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. This is in that vein, though to me, even a little more impressive because of the water aspect and just the way you're in this theater. But it's definitely in the similar vein to that show. If you enjoy the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular or similar shows, you should definitely check this out. Do not sleep on this show. Just because it's the film Waterworld, and you may say, I didn't really think that film was that great or was silly or whatever. I mean, I think it's a fun movie that it's hokey at times, but also the set design is really cool, and it's kind of a fun, old school adventure movie, and it really works well to, it's a condensed version. It's not exactly the plot. There's not the girl with the tattoo and everything else. They simplify it to say that Helen has found dry land and now wants to bring other people along, but you still have the mariner and the deacon and good stuff. You got all the universal staples of fire and effects and water and fighting and shooting and everything else. And there also are areas which are splash zones or, soak zones. If you sit in those, you are going to get wet. There are times in the beginning, the performers have a little fun and grab some buckets and throw water on people and do some jokes there. We did not sit anywhere near that. There were a few points where water kind of came up on us, but it wasn't very bad. But yes, if you are going to sit in those, just don't expect that you all to get a few drips. No, you'll get some serious water. It's maybe not on the level of like sitting in the Shamu zone back when SeaWorld had that, but it's still a significant amount of water. But on a hot day, it could be really nice to sit in that and get wet, and makes it a little more fun too. So I would say the studio tour and Waterworld were the two things I enjoyed most at Universal Hollywood, even more than Super Nintendo World, especially if you're into filmmaking and everything else. And it's also a very popular show. We went to a show in the afternoon. I think it was 3:15, and we got there about 3, and there were a lot of people. I don't think it was totally full, but it was very close to full. And of course, if you have Express Pass, you can get better seating. But just in general, I would say don't assume because Waterworld is not a movie people talk about all the time that it is not popular. The show is very popular. So something to think about. Again, like I mentioned earlier, with some of these rides having such long lines, especially if you're planning on just doing one day but staying all the way to closing, when it gets to the middle of the afternoon and you're looking and you're going, an hour plus for Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey or for Jurassic World or Transformers or whatever, this is the type of thing you should be doing in the afternoon. Similar with the studio tour, is do those. They do get, they get waits and stuff, but do those when the waits for some of the other attractions are so high, enjoy a meal, whatever else. Then at night, hopefully, if the lines are bad, they will die down as you get closer to closing, and you can figure out, okay, which ones do we want to really focus on right before we exit. Now, granted, it's all kind of about, do you want to go back to the lower lot with the big escalators or not? But regardless, I think this is the show to do. You don't need to do the first show. It's late afternoon, early evening. Pick a time when you think, hey, we want to take a break, and we either did the attractions or they all have really long lines. I think this is a great time to do it. Other things we did. I mentioned this on the clip, but we did enjoy Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, which I had done in the past in Orlando, but obviously hadn't seen the Hogsmeade area in Hollywood. Very similar in terms of the basics for it. I mean, it feels a little bigger, I think, than the Islands of Adventure version, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And still, the Hogwarts facade looks incredible. Some great views as you walk up towards it. There's also some really cool views from the Flight of the Hippogriff queue area. And that one, again, I still don't really understand what happened because, the wait was like 45 minutes, then it was 60. We're like, okay, we're just going to do it. If it's an hour, you get to see a lot of things in Hogwarts. Then it went up to 80, and that's when we decided, okay, we're going to do single rider, especially with the cast member directing us. I don't know how we ended up in the wrong line. And if I had realized it earlier, we may have just been able to step over into the other line. Of course, I want to make sure we didn't actually end up in the express line. But that's the thing. You're going through this entire Hogwarts. I did not see one Universal team member there within any part of the queue that I could have said, hey, are we in the right line? Are we in the single rider line? And granted, like I said, the one benefit is we got to ride together, but we were just thinking in terms of waiting, and it did color our experience. Whereas if we had kind of known what we were in for, or even known where we would have probably spent more time really just enjoying the sights, where we were in that room with Harry and Ron and Hermione for a really long time. And instead of thinking, oh, this is exciting, we're almost there, the thought was like, wait, which line are we in? What are we doing? How are we not in the right line? So, I mean, it's a miscommunication, or, it's probably operator error by me by going in the wrong way, but it did kind of have effect on it. But I will say the attraction is still great. I think the physical scenes stand up really well. The scenes with the Dementors are still freaky. All of that, the scale of this attraction still impresses me. I'd forgotten just, once you kind of get away from the screen and you really have these massive animatronics and figures, the dragon, the Dementors, the spiders, all that is still top notch and has not aged poorly at all. I will say the screen areas, I understand it's just not that exciting to me I know it's like, oh, we're flying over Hogwarts and everything. That doesn't hold up as well just in the past 10 plus years since it opened. But I will say, beyond that, a lot of the elements of the attraction still work extremely well. Also did Fly to the Hippogriff for the first time later in the day. And with that, I'll just say that it has a very nice queue. It's nice to have a ride that most people can do. It's like a family coaster. There's not that much to it. Luckily, we waited the right length. I think it said 20. We might have waited 15. That's the right length for this coaster. I'm not sure I need to do it again, but in the California version, they do not have a Hagrid's, or they did not in the past have Dragon Challenge. These are the two rides that they have. They also have an Ollivanders, which we did not do. So the wait for Ollivanders was never that bad. It was always about 15 minutes. So that's something it generally shows up as the lowest wait in the park. So that's something you may want to consider. If you're really into Harry Potter, they also were having the shows. They had one show with like the different groups. And it's been a while since I've seen Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, but the different groups that come in for that big competition, the Tri-Wizard Tournament, are there. So that was kind of fun to see. And of course, they sell butterbeer and have some nice other effects. Like you go into the bathroom and Moaning Myrtle's in there, which I enjoyed that. So all the kind of standard Harry Potter things are there. It's not on the level of Diagon Alley, but it's nice that they have Hogsmeade there, and it's really easy to access because it's in the upper lot, has multiple entrances, and is very easy to get to. Another thing we did was the DreamWorks Theater with the show themed to Kung Fu Panda. That had a very short wait. It said 15 minutes, but again, it's one of those where you walk up and the pre-show's already happening, so you're essentially just waiting for the next theater show. And I will say with that, it's cute. It's, new. It reminds me a little bit of the Shrek show, though that one had a very elaborate pre-show with lots of jokes. This is a little less silly. It's kind of forgettable. I almost forgot that we saw it, and I don't mean that in a terrible way. Again, I appreciate when they have anything that is more not as intense, but I will say again, if you are someone who is extremely susceptible to motion sickness, this one also does have a motion component where you're sitting and it's like you're going down a waterfall and everything else, even though it's just a big screen theater show. It is kind of still geared that way, but it's generally pretty pleasant. It feels like you're moving and the seats do a little bit. But overall, this is something where I would say I would do it before doing the Silly Funland, the spinner. But in general, I would not prioritize this. One, because the wait's not very long. This is near the entrance. So it's another thing you can do. If you're in the upper lot and the lines are really long in the afternoon, again, that's what happened with us, where we just decided to do it because most of the lines were pretty long. I would say it's solid addition. It's cool, but it's not essential to do. Cute. If your kids are into Kung Fu Panda, or if you're into Kung Fu Panda too, then maybe you should do it. I have not seen the movies, so for me, it wasn't as big of a priority. And, in terms of food, they have a lot of restaurants or a lot of places to eat, but that's weird because a lot of them are right by the entrance, the ones that have more seating and seem to be a little nicer. So when you're well into the park, and I know it's not a huge park, but especially if you're in the lower lot, you're really looking at, there's the Jurassic Park Cafe and like a Studio Cafe, which are both counter service places. And then there's a Panda Express and a Starbucks. But it's, there's fairly limited offerings down there and a few stands and everything else. In the upper area, I mean, you do have 3 broomsticks, but we ate some tacos from the taco truck, which didn't have much of a line, had pizza, and also had the giant donut, which we bought in the shop from the donut area, all related to The Simpsons. But in general, beyond that, we were mostly just picking up things on the way. Like, oh, here's some fries, or oh, let's get something from Starbucks, or we're going to get, ice cream, whatever. It was a weird day of food. I can't really say I can give you that much guidance on food in general. Everything we ate was decent. There was nothing really bad, but I don't think it's a park that's particularly known for having like top-notch food, though I do think the food in the Harry Potter area may be a good choice, and then obviously some other type of theme park food. Pricing seemed pretty similar to what it was at Disneyland. I found some of the options like drinks and things to be a little cheaper, but in general, we're pretty similar on the high end for that. So the last few things we did, actually around 5 o'clock or so, Aaron and Elise decided they were just going to go back to the hotel. And that's one really nice benefit of having that trolley come every hour, is that we hadn't driven, so we were able to split off and do that. Whereas Edda's my younger daughter, decided to stay for a bit longer. We went down to the lower lot and we were going to do the Mummy, but then that wait shot up to like 90 minutes. She was very interested in everything that was a roller coaster, and there were only 2 roller coasters here. So I wanted to get her on that, even knowing that the Mummy, it's not like an essential ride. And would have loved Jurassic World. Of course, it was closed all day, like I mentioned. So we just did Transformers. It had about a 30-minute wait. And I admit, I've never done the Florida version, actually. I've done Spider-Man, but just had never got the chance or gotten to do it. So for me, this was the first-time ride. And I will say that it felt a lot like Spider-Man. Also felt a bit like the You're Not Shooting, again, like Justice League Battle for Metropolis. Though more impressive, I will say, like Spider-Man, where it's mostly screens, but it's done in a way with a few sets and with the way the vehicles move and the 3D glasses that you can really get immersed in it. They shoot some water on you. There's fire. And I admit, I saw the first 2 Transformers films. I watched like the shows and the toys as a kid. So I am not an expert on every little bit. They do have good things in the queue where they explain to you a lot of the various Transformers and what's happening with the Allspark and with everyone else. And Megatron shows up and Optimus Prime shows up. But I know you're all pretty familiar with Transformers ride. But personally, I found it to be solid, intense. It's basically a quintessential Universal ride. You've got screens, and I don't mean to say this badly, because Universal, like with Forbidden Journey and like with Secret Life of Pets, have really started to move beyond what they typically do with dark rides. So this is not a slight or a super negative for Universal, but just in general, in this case, this is like, yep, this is what it feels like. A lot of motion, screens, intensity, but a well-done attraction. And I also have to give a big plug for if you're into Transformers, they had Transformers out fairly often in the stage right next to the attraction. Really impressive meet and greet setup. With Megatron was there once, Bumblebee was there. The 2 times we were there, both times we saw them. And, my daughter's not really that interested in meeting them or waiting in that line. but I thought it was really cool that was out. I also briefly saw the Raptor was out with the Raptor encounter. I didn't see that much during the day, but again, we didn't spend as much time in the lower lot beyond at Nintendo and then that time late in the evening. But I'm glad, my daughter, Etta really liked Transformers. I had to try and explain the plot, and I didn't probably do a good job. I was trying to explain what it was, but she didn't care. She really had a good time with it and enjoyed that. And then we finished off. We went back to the upper lot as we were getting ready to leave. And I've never done Despicable Me, Minnie and Mayhem in Florida. Again, motion simulator. I did the old Hanna-Barbera one there. I did that when I was a kid. So finally did that. There was no wait. And it was around like 7 o'clock at that point. So some of the rides were starting to dip, though not the popular ones. This was one of them that dipped. We were able to basically walk right into the pre-show. So that was nice. And I thought it was fun. It's not essential, has some funny jokes. Again, not super intense. I felt fine. It wasn't like riding The Simpsons or something like that, but the right level of if you're okay with kind of your basic motion and everything else. It was silly, and I like that you kind of get your own little spot, and we were in the front row and everything, and kind of a cool ride system. I think still works pretty well. So I don't know if it's something I would do every time, either Hollywood or Florida. Hadn't done it before, but I'm glad that I did because I feel like these last two rides were just things that I meant to do before and just had never gotten around to doing. So that was fun to get to do and then at least see the Despicable Me land, even if I wasn't particularly going to go on the spinner or spend too much time because it's a bit jarring. So looking at the park overall, I would say the biggest thing to think about when you're planning your touring is the distance to travel from the upper to the lower lot. Now, it's not like ridiculous, but the escalators, there are quite a few of them, and amazing views, incredible views just of the hills and everything else in Los Angeles, really cool stuff, and kind of a really neat, inventive way to separate the park. But you need to be aware of, you can't just be hopping back and forth so easily. It does take some time. Not that much energy because you're using, beyond the few random people who decided they wanted to run up the steps, but these are big escalators. These are like London underground escalators, it looks like, but you're not going underground, you're just going down a hill. So that's something to be aware of. Another thing is just because there are so few attractions, really prioritize what you want to see. The benefit of going earlier in the day or staying late is that you're going to have shorter lines. So you expect without Express Pass, which again, it's hard to recommend because it's so expensive. On busier days, you are going to likely be waiting in line for a few attractions. Now, if you've been to Universal Orlando, maybe this is a case where you say, I don't need to do Forbidden Journey or Transformers or Mummy's different, but similar. Of course, in that case, then you're really limiting how many attractions you have. But if your focus is really doing Nintendo, like I mentioned, you could easily cover a good portion of the day just with various waits in line and activities there. And I should also mention they do have the Toadstool Cafe, which is kind of a neat little dining establishment, which I would make a reservation if you want to go to that at Super Nintendo World. We did not bother. But I know that when we were there, the reservations were all gone by that day, and I don't believe they take walk-ups, at least to my knowledge. But it's kind of an interesting, cool park. If you're interested in kind of the history of movie making and Universal and the backstory, you get to do the studio tour. You can also see things like Waterworld. Now, they don't have as much, like I said, because they have closed the special effects show and animal actors. So not as many of those kind of old-school Hollywood-type shows. But just in general, they still have enough to offer on that side of it. And then when you add in some of the newer attractions and some cool lands and all of that, you can easily fill a day. And if you don't want to have to spend a lot of time in line, you want to see more characters, enjoy some meals, see all the shops, you could easily do like a day or two. And a lot depends on your interest in Super Nintendo World. Like if this is the priority, probably want to buy the early access ticket. But if you prefer, the other option is to try and just get the access ticket, but if you prefer, the other option is to try and just get an hour virtual queue time. Give yourself a couple days to make sure you can do that. Beyond that, though, this is not like going to Disneyland where you have that level of attractions, and because some of the attractions like the studio tour are longer, you may come out of it and be like, oh, I only did 6 things. But if some of them are longer, Waterworld or the studio tour, you may get value out of your day that way. It's just a different type of park. It's very different. And also, if you have people that don't love thrill rides, and especially if someone gets motion sickness, I don't know if it's totally the park for you, because even the studio tour has two moments where simulators areas that if someone has severe motion sickness, they're going to deal with. And it depends how severe it is, and if the person is good with just kind of hanging out and seeing the cool details of Nintendo and Hogsmeade and everything else. But I will say that that is a factor more than Disneyland, because there are not that many things beyond Secret Life of Pets and going to see Waterworld and everything that don't have some motion component that could impact you. But overall, we had a good day. I think it was great to get back there, especially for things like the studio tour. I'm glad we got to see Super Nintendo World. Even if I have some concerns, I think it's a really interesting land with lots of fun, cool details. The Mario Kart attraction is very interesting in terms of how they're using the AR portion, and just in general with the dark ride. A lot of interesting things to dig into, especially when the Epic Universe land opens. I think it's going to be even more interesting because you'll have a new attraction plus the old ones, and see how that one functions. So that's going to do it for this second part of the trip report from our visit to California. We had a really fun time at Disneyland, at Disney California Adventure, and then enjoyed going to Universal Studios Hollywood here at the end and seeing Super Nintendo World. I would love to hear what you think of this episode. You can email me, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. Follow me on Twitter, TomorrowSoc, Facebook or Instagram at Tomorrow Society. And if you'd like to support the show, the best thing you can do is just tell other people about it. It is really challenging to find new listeners given how many shows there are in theme parks, Disney, travel, whatever, variation of it you want to look at. It's just very tricky to do that. So anytime you can let other people know about the show, that is awesome. And of course, leaving ratings on Spotify or Apple Podcast always helps. If you'd like to do even more, you can support the show through Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Tomorrow Society to learn more. Or you can buy me a Dole Whip with a one-time contribution. Go to tomorrowsociety.com/Dole Whip to learn more. The music you are hearing right now was written by Adam Hookey and performed by the Sophisticated Babies. Next time, I'll be talking with former Disney Imagineer Ellie Erlandson about her work as an architect at Walt Disney Imagineering for more than 30 years. She originally started at WED in the 70s, worked on Epcot, and then came back and worked on Disneyland Paris, Disney's Animal Kingdom, so much more. It was awesome to talk to Ellie, who also is an author of the book about the women of Imagineering, with 12 really great stories, including some former podcast guests, Peggy Ferris and Carolyn Connolly Armitage. It was awesome to talk to Ellie about that book and about her career and so much more. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I will talk to you again next time.